All right, so I promise you, if you're watching this third video, that this is the shortest of the videos. Um, and I was hoping to get everything in 2 videos because I know that your time is precious, but this is, like I said, one of my favorite topics, so bear with me. Um, in terms of rewarding students, I mentioned it in the earlier videos to make sure you're following school guidelines and policies. However, I'm being 100% honest, I did give out prizes and rewards, and I'll talk through that a little bit. So the first thing I will say is that the more you can benefit intrinsic motivation and really support students by using good techniques and praise statements that are focused on their efforts and behavior, the better. So in terms of statements like just simply saying good job, that you can avoid that. You want to say things like, I really appreciate how you did your math today. Or I noticed how you were working during writing workshop. Awesome. That was really good how you were really focused in, really making some really good edits and changes. Great work today, right? So you can see the difference. Uh, yes, having a attaboy or good job or really good work today is fine in terms of it's a nice thing to have. It's better than not doing that. But you really want to focus on that praise that's going to build a student up and know why and know how to get on that track. Okay, I did have a weekly raffle system where what I did is instead of passing out things all the time like candy or stickers or whatever, I had raffle tickets that I'd give kids when they were doing something good. They'd put their name on it, and then I'd put it back in a bucket, during the time if they got a raffle ticket. And then I'd mix those up, and on Fridays I'd pull out some names and have some sort of prizes that I'd collected. The prizes might be silly, something I found, something I'd make, something that the kids wanted, maybe a book that that I had read that's my own personal book and I wanted to give it away, those kind of things. And so that was a way for me to connect to my students as well in terms of knowing what prizes they might like and what they might want to win. Um, Beyond that, random acts of kindness, for you to demonstrate that and show them that is a good thing. Um, I prefer that versus them earning something like earning a pizza party or earning brownies or earning cookies or those things. I've seen those. It can be fine. I know there's a lot of benefit to working towards a goal like a pizza party, but I preferred simply noticing that kids really worked hard on something, like a unit of study that we had. When I taught 5th grade, we had a unit I called Fraction Land. And my kids would joke about it because we'd go to Fraction Land, we'd stay in Fraction Land for a long time until every student really got it and have them work together on the fraction concepts. And we like endured Fraction Land. And when we got out of Fraction Land, we would have a big celebration that we're all leaving Fraction Land. We know what we're doing with fractions. Yay, gone to Fraction Land. And I'd bring in cookies or brownies and we'd have a big Fraction Land party that we have survived going through Fraction Land. It's those kind of things. They weren't expecting it. They didn't know that I was going to do that. I'm proud of them. I'm showing them that as a parental figure who is a teacher, I am showing them what a good reaction should be to hard work, which is, wow, you really worked hard. Let's celebrate that. Not if you do this, then I will give this to you. Okay. So I mentioned a lot of this already, so this won't be too hard to kind of go over quickly, but no matter what grade level or what you're doing, you can give your students things to memorize. Now, in terms of how humans develop, we prefer memorizing stuff when we're young. We like to repeat things a lot when you're younger. Older people tend to struggle more with memorizing things, or they don't like it, or it feels goofy to them to tell them to memorize a list of all the presidents in order. But 5th graders, they got a lot of pride in the fact that they could rattle off all the presidents in order, or my history poem, or science questions and answers. I did a variety of things. If you can sing and you can put in songs and you can play music, go for it. I just am self-conscious about how I sing, so I tend to use these things because it's something that I'm more comfortable doing. The science, I didn't really mention it too much, but science is question and answer. It would be like mostly terminology. I'd give them little sheets that they could practice as partners. And whenever we had spare time, I'd say, oh, get out your science sheets. And they would practice those. The math chant was something they did on their way into the classroom for math coming from lunch. I would start them off. I'd say, all right, go for it. 2 times 2. And they do their squares. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. 4 times 4 is 16. They get all the way through 12 times 12 is 144. Then I'd have them do some arm motions with angles, acute, right, obtuse. Then I'd have them do parallel lines, perpendicular lines, intersecting lines, all that kind of stuff. You get the point, hopefully. If you don't, let me know. I would love to talk more about that. But the concept was really really interactive ways for the kids to use a lot of energy in a fun way as classroom management. Okay, all right. So one of the other things I would like to tell you before I sign off on this last video is really think beforehand about possible problems. Really brainstorm, and this is something you can talk to your cooperating teacher about, is what do you want the kids to do when they finish a task early? So if you think about your classroom, in a typical school environment, let's say you have 20 students, you give them an assignment, you're going to have for sure about 5 kids, usually, that are very quick to finish. So what do they do? Okay. Also, you tend to have about 5 to 10 students that are going to be strugglers who are going to take a long time to finish it. So what happens with them? What's your policy? What's your procedure? I personally like to collect all work and not have any punishment for kids who are slower than others, because I want to see what their work is, and that's just something that I do. But anyways, the point going is, what happens when a kid finishes early? What does that look like? You don't want to punish them for finishing early, but you don't want them to get in trouble because they finished early. Of course, bathroom procedures, what's that look like? What happens when they come to school late for one reason or another? So it's not a disruption. You're in the middle of a lesson, kid walks in, hey, everybody, I'm here, right? You don't want that. And then when you don't have supplies, you forgot paper, pencil, what does that look like if it's something that just happens on a one-off versus something where a kid constantly is never coming to school prepared for any materials? So what do you do? Okay, so those are all things, those are just a couple problems beforehand. Bigger problems, I didn't even mention things like fire drills or tornado drills or any of those things. Talk to your cooperating teacher about all those. Make sure you know what you're supposed to do if the fire alarm goes off, or what do you do in the case of a lockdown drill or something like that. So those are all other things that kind of brainstorm a day in the life of the classroom. What is a typical response? Because you don't know and you're new. So you have to learn just all the basic functions of how the school operates. And then, of course, you want to do things your way to learn if it works or not. Your idea of what a good teacher is versus what happens when you try it out in student teaching and go, oh, wow, I thought I was going to do this, but, I'm going to change it a little bit. Okay, final thoughts. 1, you're not hired as a teacher to be a child's friend. You should be friendly, you should be respectful, you should be kind, but you need to be the teacher, okay? You need to be the most responsible person in the room. And that includes the fact, especially for student teaching, that's even more responsible sometimes than the actual cooperating teacher. Going back to my student teaching days, there were many times that I had better lesson plans than my cooperating teachers. I had more prepared materials. I knew exactly what I was going to be doing much more than my cooperating teacher would have done, because they kind of get in the bad habit sometimes. I am not trying to throw cooperating teachers under any kind of metaphorical bus here. I am just simply saying that as a veteran teacher, sometimes you write less detailed lessons, or you don't prepare as much, kind of wing things more. So don't compare yourself to the cooperating teacher and say, well, the cooperating teacher doesn't really write lesson plans, so I don't have to, right? You're trying to be the most professional person there and model good professional behavior to the students always. Okay, top priority, once again, well-managed classroom, students feel safe, learning is a top priority. Learning can be enjoyable, should be engaging, should keep the students' attention, should be motivational, but you're never, this is my final thought about fun. Sorry, I'm moving myself up there. And I always use the metaphor of Chuck E. Cheese, and I don't know if too many kids go to Chuck E. Cheese, especially in Nebraska. But school will never compete with Chuck E. Cheese or Disney or video games or any of those other things, right? Or cell phones for high schoolers. School won't compete with fun that you do just by yourself on your own. However, you're not going to learn a whole bunch at Chuck E. Cheese. You might learn a little skee ball here or there. You might learn how to hit the buzzer at the right time to get more tickets, or you might learn economic principles where you spend 20 bucks on coins and you get nothing out of it. Sorry, cracking myself up. But the point is, with learning, is school is supposed to be a place where you're going to learn, where you are feeling like you are benefiting. You are benefiting from the experience of learning and being there. So that's the environment you're going for, an engaged learning environment. Sit down, take out paper, jot down ideas. What does it take to make a learning environment? And that should be your goal, is that you are going to help design the best possible learning environment you can, especially in difficult, trying times. Okay, thanks for watching this one. Got another video series to make on another favorite topic. And then that's it for these videos, for this seminar one. So thanks for watching.